Hello, welcome to my second module on JavaScript AI Developer course. Now in this presentation, I will discuss all about flow control. Now, what is flow control? Now, the flow control in JavaScript determines the sequence in which statements are executed in a JavaScript program. It includes conditional statements, loops, and exception handling. Now, in conditional statements, it is used to execute different blocks of the code based on conditions. Now, the condition could arise from if statement, if else statement, else if statement, a switch statement. Well, the loop could execute a block of code now for multiple times. For example, we have a for loop which executes a block of code a fixed number of times. Well, we can have a while loop which executes a block of code while a condition is essentially true. We have a do while loop. We could have a for in loop which could iterate over object properties. And of course, don't forget the exception handling. Well, we handle errors gracefully. For example, we have a try-catch block. This try-catch block will be it is essentially used to handle errors without stopping the program, which is relatively important. We don't want the program to stop. So to demonstrate all of this, we will create a new project. The simple project that we will create is the number guessing game, where we create a game where the user has to guess a randomly generated number by the system. And let's start by creating the project. We copy this and paste it to perplexity.ai, and we have an additional description, additional hint that he has to generate the code in JavaScript, CSS, and HTML file separately. And after a while, okay, here's the JavaScript, HTML, and CSS version of the number guessing game. And we have three versions. We have the HTML, which is the index.html. Well, usually the index.html or the HTML, the hypertext markup language, so as we call it, it is a foundation of web page. It is essentially the foundation of all web pages. It would provide the structure and the context of a content of a web page. Well, we use elements like H1 to H6 for headings, P for paragraphs. Well, we have E for links, IMG for images, div and span for layouts. Now we will try to explore more on that. And another version that he generated is CSS, or the styles.css. What is this CSS? This is essentially a cascading style sheet. It is used to style HTML elements by controlling the layouts, colors, fonts, and responsiveness. So essentially, that is the styling of the web page. Now, lastly, we have the JavaScript, or that's the script.js. Now, what's that? Essentially, a brief view of the JavaScript is a programming language that adds interactivity to the web pages, where it will handle the user inputs. Here in our example, the user will input a number. So along with that, there could be animations for dynamic context and API requests. Now let's try to build the program. So we copy the structure, or the HTML, the index.html to, you guessed it correctly, to IntelliJ IDEA. Now I have shown in my previous video how to install the IntelliJ IDEA, but to facilitate the discussion so that you won't look back into my previous videos, let me give you a recap. You can download the IntelliJ here in the jetbrains.com idea download, and after a while you have the link, and it will start to download everything. And don't worry, everything here will run smoothly. You can install it without difficulty. So after following all of the instructions, you will have your IntelliJ IDEA running, and you have to create a folder here. Might as well name the folder as guest, because this is essentially a project. The project is all about a number guessing game, so I name it as guest. And as I have said, you have to create 3 versions of the files: index.html, script.js, and styles.css. We paste the copied code from the perplexity.ai in the index.html here. So we essentially have it now. And let me try to explain it. It's a doctype HTML. So the language is English, EN, and we have the character set UTF-8, which defines the character encoding for the document. We also have the content with device width initial scale set to 1, which would ensure mobile responsiveness. So that's a standard. So we have now the title. Now might as well name the title as a number guessing game. That's the title of the web page. And then we'll link the styles.css. So this would link external CSS file for styling. So essentially the CSS contains the style of the web page. And where do we get this styles.css? So the style CSS is also generated by our perplexity.ai, and it's given here in the previous slides. So we copied the styles.css, and I have done that and pasted it here for reference. So we have the essentially the style.css here. We'll discuss it later, but for now let's try to continue our main structure, the index.html. Here in the body, so we have essentially an h1, which is the element represented by 6 levels of headings, h1 to h6. Now h1 is the highest section level, and h6 is the lowest. So by default, all heading elements create a block level. So essentially the h1 there means the heading is relatively large. So might as well let me show you how large it is. So we open that in our browser. My browser is Chrome. So here it is. This is how big the heading is. It's a number guessing game, and this is the h1. As you can see, it's relatively large. So next we have a paragraph. That's P. Well, you can read it. It is essentially an element which represents a paragraph. So paragraphs are usually represented in visual media as blocks of text separated from adjacent blocks. So what is the text all about? The text is all about, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10. Might as well try to guess it. So do we see that in the web page? Yes. After the number guessing game, the main heading, which is h1, we have the I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10. So try to guess it. And then after that, we have to enter our guess here. So where is this placeholder? So that is the input field where we enter our guess. So might as well set the type as a number, because we will input a number essentially. So here the ID, so the ID is a global attribute. It defines the identifier, which must be unique in the whole document. So it's quite unique. Might as well call it guess dash input, because that's essentially the input given by the guess or by the user. So it's essentially a guess that is an input of the user. So the proper name, guess dash input. Now the placeholder here, you must enter your guess. So to give a hint to the user, enter your guess, and we have it here in the placeholder. The user will have a hint. He will give a number and enter his guess. Now, beside that, we have a button here, which is guess, and as you can see, it's quite dynamic and interactive. Our pointer is an arrow. When we hover around it, it turns into a hand that's pointed to the button guess. Later on, we will try to explore how it's done. So we have to if we click the button there, the button is guess. It upon on click, it will activate the function check guess, and this check guess is linked to it is essentially a link externally to JavaScript file. So the name of the JavaScript file is script.js, and we should see this function check guess there, and let's try to see it. And we see the function check guess. By the way, where do we get this call function? That is also generated by our perplexity.ai, and all we need to do is to copy that. Here it is, our javascript.js. We have a function check guess, and we have to copy that and paste it again to the corresponding script.js here in IntelliJ IDEA. And I have done that. We have pasted it. Here's the function check guess, and we will try to examine it further. But for now, let me try to finish the index.html. So after the button, we now have a paragraph to display feedback messages. Now to make it unique, let's try to name it. So the identifier has to be unique in the whole document. So since it is a feedback, might as well name it as feedback. So it's specially designed for the feedback messages. And then let's try to examine the CSS and the JavaScript. Now let's try to go to the link here, the styles.css. The styles.css is located in this portion, and as you can see, everything here is aligned to the center. Is it true? Yes. Well, based from the web page, everything is aligned here at the center. So the primary reason for that is that we have mentioned it is in the center. Centers the text context within the page, and then we assign a margin which is 20 pixel. Now what is this 20 pixel? Well, in CSS we have a term called pixel. It's abbreviated as px. It is a unit of measurement used to define sizes, margins, paddings, font sizes, and other dimensions of elements on a web page. Well, it's essentially a pixel is a fixed absolute unit that corresponds to a dot on a screen. Well, for our practical purposes, the margin here, which is 20px, is enough. So it adds margin around the context of the page. Next, we style the number of the input field. So the type is a number, the padding is 8, so the font size is 16, and we have a margin to the right that is 10 pixels. Now how about the button? Now the button is, we add a padding there, 8 pixel vertical and 16 pixel horizontal. Now the font size there is 16 pixel, and here the cursor pointer is set to the cursor to a pointer when hovering over the button. So there's a change. It's quite dynamic as we see it. As we hover around the button, as you can see, the arrow is changed to a hand pointed at the guess. So that is the reason for that is that we have assigned the cursor as a pointer. So changes the cursor to a pointer when hovering over the button. Now finally, we have a feedback. So for the feedback messages, we add a margin on top of it, which is 15 pixel, and the font weight is set to bold. So feedback text is bold. Now if we click on the guess, so let's try to click on the guess. So let me try to assign a number. Say the lowest number is 1, for example. Of course that is too low, and then I click guess. There's a feedback message which is too low. Now how's that? What's happening behind the scene here is when you click on the guess, it activates this function which is check guess. It calls that function check guess, which is located in the script.js file. Now we go on to the script.js file and we see that check guess is present. Now to discuss the function check guess, well, we explore it line by line. So we get the input element where the user will enter his or her guess. Now the commander is get element by ID. Now as we know, the ID there is guess dash input. So where's that? So here it is. The ID is guess dash input. So the type is a number. So we assign that to constant guess input, and then this guess input has to be parsed to an integer. So we convert the user input to integer, and the command to do that is parse int. So that's the guess input value. How about the feedback? So we see feedback from the previous slides. So might as well assign a constant. That's the feedback. And we get the element by ID. That's feedback. So that's the reason why we set the ID to feedback. So it's relatively unique. We call that in the JavaScript file, and the command to do that is get element by ID. So that's essentially the ID, which is feedback. Now we check now if the input is a valid number. So we use a condition here, which is the if the guess is not a number. So what is this NaN? So it's a abbreviation for the input is not a number, so NaN, so not a number. So if it's not a number, so might as well display or print a message to so that the user will read it that he should enter a valid number. Assuming that he did not enter a valid number, then we have to instruct him to put a valid number. So the command to do that is feedback text content. Now if the guess is a number, so all we need to do is try to compare it with the randomly generated number. So by the way, how do the system creates the randomly generated number? The function to do that is this one, mat.random. So here we compare the user's guess with the generated number. If the guess is less than the number, so it's essentially less, so might as well print it is too low as the feedback message. Else if, so that if the condition is the guess is something greater than the number, so we have a feedback text content that's displayed to be too high in the feedback. Else we have no choice, then it's not less than or it's not greater than, then it has to be identical. It is the same with the randomly generated numbers. So here we give a feedback, a text content which states that it is, hey, congratulations, you guessed it correctly. So the user guessed it correctly. So that's it. That's the whole program. That's the whole combination of the JavaScript, the index.html, and the style.css. Now let's try to see if it works. So again, 1 is too low, so let me try to increase the number. Say for example 3, it's too high, so immediately we know that the number is 2, so it should print congratulations. So let's try to lower it down 2, so that's correct. We have essentially hit the correct number, and that's 2. So he printed a greetings to us that, hey, congratulations, you guessed it correctly. Now let me try to refresh the page. This time let me try a high number. Actually it's the highest number, so we know that his response should be it's too high, and the feedback is correct, too high. Now let's try to lower it down. Still too high for 8. Let's try 5. Still too high. 3. Oh, so after several tries, we have successfully guessed the number, and he prints congratulations again. So here I have demonstrated the power of JavaScript programming. We can create a web page if we combine or integrate the HTML, which is the structure, the CSS file, which is the styling, and of course, to make it more interactive, we have the function from the JavaScript. In the next video, I will show more programs written in JavaScript. But for now, that's all, and thank you.